Hey, welcome everyone to another episode of The Other Side of Addiction. Hey, before I introduce our guest and the title of our show, I just want to give a huge shout out and a huge thank you. And I love you guys so much. And that's to our sponsor, Emergo Academy. That's Emergo Academy. I trained with Dave and Susan Kenny, gosh, a couple years ago, became an international crisis and recovery coach. And what I loved about their coaching, it's all about the brain first approach. And I'm one that feels that our addiction does not define us, even if it's in our past. We are not helpless to it. And the reason why I say that is because what I have learned through their coaching about how the brain works and some other coaching that I've done, it just starts from a trauma, right? There's something that's happened to us in our life. And a lot of times we have to really do some deep searching to go back and find out what that is. The questions that they ask and even what they teach us in our coaching, man, it's just helped me so much. And even if you're not interested in being a crisis and recovery coach and you would just like to learn the process of how our brain works, I highly recommend taking their training. I mean, check them out, emergoacademy.com. Check out Dave and Susan Kenny. And these guys have been doing amazing work for many, many years. Yeah, they're out of Canada. I love these guys so much. They are really, really good coaches, and they're now really my really good friends. I talk to them quite often through text and quite often through phone calls. So, guys, if you're looking for a new way of living your life, again, I highly recommend checking out Emergo Academy. Okay, my gosh, I am so excited for today's show, and I just got a warning on my phone to tell me I did not shut it off, so it is shut off now. Laney, I just want to say thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us today, and I'm really excited about what our title is. We're gonna be talking about codependency, the way out of despair into a life of freedom. You and I had a phone conversation a little over a month ago
Very
and
good.
shared a lot of your story with me, and I shared some of mine. And we talked about it just a little bit before we started recording, but I'll hold off on that. And again, just say thank you, and I'm sure I'll get into it as the show goes. But you know, you mentioned something right before I hit record. Codependency is a big word for a lot of us to swallow. For someone
For
like
sure.
me, I would have never ever thought I was in that position, and I realized after I had to subside my ego to say, yes, I am in it. What finally opened up your eyes? I mean, I know you've got some history, which I'm sure will come out, but what really
Yeah.
opened your eyes to go, oh my gosh, I am really in the middle of this?
I think the definitions around codependency have expanded and become um, more layperson, where I was able to understand it. When I first was labeled codependent, it was by a family member, and I didn't think they had the right to talk to me that way. I didn't think they had any idea what was going on in my life, and how dare they. And they suggested that I might consider being like looking at being a codependent. That was in my early 20s, and I rejected that. I did do a little bit of looking, but there wasn't really an internet to even look at back then. And what I could find was really more dealing with um, like the alcoholic and the enabler, like that relationship. And I wasn't married to an alcoholic. I was married to, or had been married to a child predator. And um, I could not accept the label of enabler in that context. I'm not providing him the children. I'm not encouraging him to engage with this material. Um, so I was very resistant to that, and I continued on in my life. I divorced that man and had several other pretty terrible relationships, and finally got to a point where I just like I keep on getting myself into bad situations, choosing people who don't treat me well, finding myself miserable. There's got to be, I'm the common denominator. Like, not that the people that I'm being in relationship with don't have any accountability for their actions, but why am I attracted to that? Why do I go into that? What is it about me that, yeah, I I asked my mom at one point, I'm like, what is wrong with me that these people I keep on attracting these people? And she didn't really have the answer, but that helped me frame the idea of like there's something inside of me that doesn't recognize the disrespect, and the disrespect just comes from me not having any boundaries, from not knowing what my worth is. And so it was actually earlier this year, I walked into a Codependency Anonymous group in my hometown and started really reading the material that was available and identifying with the things that they were saying that made sense, and I connected with it. It resonated a lot better than that initial definition that I ran across that was like the enabler to an alcoholic, and then trying to fit that into the world that I was living in at that time. Um, so I think that's is January to March is kind of where I began understanding what it was and identifying with the descriptors. Um, and I found the codependency is a helpful word just because most people know what that means. They hear it and they right away they kind of have some idea of what you're talking about. But it came down to the root for me that I'm a people pleaser. I'm way or was, I'm getting better, I was way too concerned about what other people thought about me and thought it was my job to manage their emotions. And I didn't realize I was even doing that. I was told early on, while I was still at Codependents Anonymous, that one, codependents are liars. That offended me greatly. And that codependents are controllers. And I thought, like, I'm super independent. I never try to control anybody. I'm just trying to make people happy. I'm not trying to control anything. And I don't lie. I'm a very honest person. Like, I have a past. I remember being in elementary school and high school, and I would tell tall tales. And even that was part of codependency, just trying to get people to like me. If I have an interesting story, they'll want to be my friend. Um, but as I got older, I stopped that kind of lying. But the lying that I was doing was, telling somebody that I wanted to participate in an activity they wanted to participate in, even though it had no attraction to me or had negative attraction. Like I hate doing this. I wish we weren't here. I hate ice fishing. I hate being cold. I hate being wet. I don't even like fishing the regular way. Why would I want to do it cold and miserable? And I would go anyway to try to make somebody else happy. So I realized that was lying, until it was like put in front of me, and I was like, how dare you? How dare you call me a liar? I'm an honest person. I don't steal. I don't cheat. I don't. Oh, but I lie all the time. Or somebody would ask my opinion on something, and my thoughts on the subject matter, whatever we're talking about, I knew was vastly different than the person I was talking to. And rather than share my opinion and let there be some tension and have a conversation about where I'm coming from, where they're coming from, maybe we find common ground, maybe we agree to disagree. I couldn't do that. If there was a potential for conflict, I will lie my way out of it. I'll just nod and smile and agree with them and never share how I actually feel about anything. So that's,
And I love how you put all those categories together, right? Because there is more to the codependency than like just depending on someone.
mm.
So
Well, in
much,
fact, like
so much.
codependents are independent, right? Like I don't want help. I want to help other people. I want
Mhm.
to take care of them and fix them, but somebody tries to step into my space and do something good for me. I don't need help. I'm good.
Yeah.
And that made me think the word codependent was confusing for a long time because I'm not dependent on them, except I'm dependent on them to take care of my emotions. If they're good, I'm good. If they're not good, I'm not good. So my codependency is like that. But as far as like asking for what I need, or saying like I need emotional support, I need physical support, I need someone to, I couldn't tell people how I was feeling, and I didn't think anybody would care. I didn't think anybody would step up for me. I'm the person that stepped up for other people and tried to make them feel better. I didn't have anybody doing that for me.
Yeah. Yeah, that the emotions is a big one as well. My past wife, we were together 18 years,
Mm,
and when she was in the depth of her addiction, that codependency was so strong. And she would, when she'd go into rehab, they'd tell her that she had codependency, and she would get very, very upset. I remember
mm,
times when I'd call her, she would just let loose, not upset with me, but just pouring her feelings out, calling them names and all kinds of stuff. And how dare they, just like what you said, and and then somebody mentioned it to me as well. Many, many times I got mentioned by friends and outsiders once they knew what was going on in my life. And they're
mm,
like, well, you have some codependency. And I'm like, the hell if I do. She does, but I don't. It was easier to point the finger to her. And it took me so much time to figure it out because, you talked about enabling. You know, I enabled her for so long during the 8, 9 years when she was really into the addiction before she went on her 2.5 year sobriety. And I didn't even realize that was a part of it. And I was doing everything I could to try to make her happy. And also knowing that if I treated her a different way, knowing that that's the way she was looking for, then hopefully that'd keep her away from the bottle. And it
Hmm.
never did. But I
Yep.
would still continue to do it over and over and over with the same results.
Hmm.
We find ourselves in that trap, right? We find ourselves going, if I can only do this, this will take care of this problem.
And
And
that's where
I'll,
the control comes in, right? Where they say that codependents are controlling.
yep. And that's really where we're dumping more fuel on the fire, and we don't even realize that we're doing it. It's crazy how it takes control of us. And someone like me who, I had that ego, there's no way in hell I have that issue to
Right.
finally put my tail between my legs and go, oh yeah, I've really got this issue big time.
Hmm.
And pleasing everyone else. I don't have a problem now with my working. I don't have a problem telling people how I feel,
Yeah.
and I've also learned with all my experience of having a bad temper and therapy and all that stuff, I know when to walk away as well. Right? It's like I don't need to prove my point. You
Hmm.
know, they're going to believe what they want to believe. I know what the truth is. So it's time for me just to walk away because I don't need to fall back into that. And I think that's where we
Yeah,
find ourselves when we're in those types of relationships.
it is. Yeah. I know I lived on a roller coaster, and if I came home and they were doing well, then I'm good. And if I come home and they're not doing well, I'm a mess. I remember I probably spent a good 2 years going to a small group, kind of like a support group that was part of my church. And I dominated every single weekly meeting being on that roller coaster, just coming in and like, it's a disaster and I don't know what to do and I can't fix it. And just like, I was so enmeshed with them and couldn't separate what they were doing from how it affected me. And when it's a marriage or a romantic relationship, there is supposed to be some interdependency. If your person is struggling, you shouldn't just be like, yeah, good for you, bye. But it also should not wreck your world to the point you can't function.
Yeah.
You can't sleep, you can't eat, you can't go to work, you can't do anything. And it had me so messed up, and I just didn't even I didn't see it. And like you were talking about before, like someone else can see it so much better, like from the outside and observing the patterns. When you're in the thick of it, it's really hard to identify the behaviors like, no, this is healthy. I'm just trying to take care of my person. I love them. Like, what's wrong with that? And they're on
Exactly.
the outside going like, it's making you crazy and you're killing yourself to try to take care of them. That's where the problem is. Like, yes, we should do nice things for each other and we should inconvenience ourselves from time to time to help somebody out. But when it comes to the point where it's so detrimental that your health is suffering, your physical health, your mental health, your spiritual health is all just garbage, then at what point do you say, I need to take some time for myself? And for me, that the answer was never. I'm not permitted to take time for myself. I can't say no. When someone says do this, the only option is yes.
Yeah.
No was not in my vocabulary. And I was terrified. Like if I say no, if I upset them, if I offend them, if they decide they never want to be my friend again, so for me, like as I've looked at codependency and learned more about myself, the, the root cause of my codependency has always been fear. It's always been, I'm afraid I'm going to get hurt or rejected or ostracized or mocked, whatever. It's all the people pleasing stuff. I want them to like me. I'm afraid if they don't like me. And so fear drove me to codependency. That's what, you know, that's how I
Well,
see how it progressed for me.
it's like if you're with somebody who is an addict, right? No matter what that addiction is, it's that fear of doing a certain thing that you're afraid that if you reject them, they're going to go in that other direction, and you love and you care about them, so you don't want them to go in that direction. So again, you're doing your best to be that life jacket for them, that life preserver.
Mm-hmm.
And really the whole time that you're doing that, you are putting yourself deeper and deeper and deeper into a hole. And, I think I shared with you, and I know we talked about suicide when we had our talk.
Mhm.
And, it got so bad for me. I was on my way home one day from a networking group, and I had decided I'm going to go home and get my pistol and go up in the mountains and take my life. Now, would I have done it? I don't know. I didn't get to that point, and I'm so grateful that I didn't get to that point. But that's where my mind was starting to go because I had sunk into it so deep. I had somebody on my show years ago, probably three, no, at least 4 years ago. You go, Al, you probably don't realize it, but you're addicted to her addiction. And I went, whoa, that was like a kick between the crotch, right? I'm like, my
Mhm.
gosh. But he was exactly right because I lived my whole life of fear around of what my actions were going to cause their actions in which
Mhm.
direction they were going to go.
Yep. And it's nice to be able to step back now and be like, my actions are my choices, your actions are your choices, and you get to choose how you respond to me. I'm not at fault for your choices. Like we can choose to be kind or unkind, we can choose to be helpful or unhelpful, but if we're making the right decision for ourselves and we're being obedient to what we're supposed to do, and they still go off and they still get upset, we have conflict and they get mad and they walk away. That's, they go and do whatever it is that they do to cope with that, healthy or unhealthy. I don't have to have the responsibility for fixing that. I think that the last relationship I was in before I got into the Codependence Anonymous, um, I was, and I guess I viewed myself like this for a long time. It's part of being part of the diagnosis of codependency is that um, I kind of saw myself as a savior and that person needed saving. And I had something that I could offer that would fix them, that would make their life better, that would improve things. And I would step in and swoop in and, but then like the minute that I'm in that, I've presented myself in such a way that now I have to keep up this facade of being really, really good and always agreeable and always taking care of their every need. And this particular gentleman got really comfortable in that super quickly and put in zero effort. Oh, sorry about that. I knew it was coming. But they stopped putting any effort in because I was giving all the effort. They didn't have to do anything. Like I just showed up for them with no reciprocity. And we had a few conversations that didn't go very well. Um, there was really poor communication. I'm trying to ask for the things I need, and they're trying to tell me they're not capable of giving me those things, and I couldn't understand why. If you say that you want to be in this relationship, why can't you contribute anything? And we were just totally on different pages. But I kept on trying and trying, and I finally got to the point. It was actually December of last year. I couldn't see a way out. I knew I was miserable. I knew I hated my life. I knew that I couldn't keep up the facade with them and continue to pretend to be this person that I'm not. Like just Betty homemaker plus boss girl doing all the work plus, fantastic cook and amazing romantic partner. Like I just couldn't keep it up on all fronts all the time. And there was stuff I wanted to do that I wasn't getting to do. If I wanted to go by myself someplace, I got punished. If I wanted to spend time alone, I got punished. If I wanted to spend time with them when they didn't want to spend time with me, I got punished. It was just there was no good. It just wasn't good all the way around. But I got to a point where I just kind of looked around and thought like I've made such a mess of this and I don't know what's wrong with me, but I can't fix it and I give up. And I overdosed. And I remember falling asleep, and as I was falling asleep, I'm counting respirations and heartbeat and going like, yep, this is how it goes. You just kind of drift off and then you're gone. And I remember having the thought like, God, if you care, I'm like, I've made a mess and this is all my fault. If you care and you think you can fix it, go for it. But otherwise, I'm out. And I thought that was it. I really didn't think there was going to be a tomorrow. And I woke up on December 20th. Tomorrow to be a year. I woke up on December 20th and I was shocked. I was so surprised that I was still alive.
I
And I
bet.
thought like, okay, God heard me. He has something for me. I better dig in and figure out what's going on. And that was the very next week I walked into my first Codependence Anonymous meeting, and I spent a few weeks there, and then I found Celebrate Recovery at my church and shifted to Celebrate Recovery. And that was helpful because I don't just have codependency. And self recovery covers all the hurts, hangups, and habits. So I you dig into a lot of stuff there, but it was that first acknowledgement, that first like, I know I have a problem. I know things are broken beyond my ability to repair them. So I'm walking out of denial into acceptance that I'm out of control and I can't fix it on my own. I need help. And
You
that,
know, and I think you just said a key word there, Laney, and that's the acceptance,
mhm,
right? Once we can accept and we can open up, I shared something in a talk at our Healing Utah Success Summit a couple of years ago, and also it was something that really opened my eyes, and it took me till 2023 to figure it out, and that's the vulnerability, right?
mhm, yes,
Once once we are vulnerable and we open up and we take responsibility for our own actions. I mean, last week's show was about accountability, right?
it's
And
so good.
once
Yep,
and my guest said something that was so powerful. She said, once we allow ourselves to take accountability, a whole new world opens up.
there's
And
so much freedom in it.
oh my gosh, freedom, my hell, yes, it opens up a ton, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
yeah.
That
I've resisted the labels. I think we do. Like, we don't want to be labeled, especially something that if we have like a negative connotation with it, you know, you don't want to get slapped with that label. I think I resisted the codependency label for so long because of that. And even now, I would still prefer the people pleasing label because I see the relationship in the Bible to people pleasing. The Bible doesn't talk about codependency, except it does. It talks about fear of God over fear of man, so it's there, but it's just a vernacular in the world is codependency, so we go with that. But I I think when I finally said, okay, I accept I have a problem. I accept that codependency seems to fit it checks all the boxes for everything that I'm struggling with. Let's dive in and see what that's about. And then going, yep, I do that. And my first husband, he struggled with porn addiction our entire marriage. I didn't realize it was continuous. I thought it was intermittent. Um, he finally got arrested, and we find out that he was involved with child abuse material. And when they tried to label me as codependent back then, that family member that came to me, I I just thought like I'm thinking like for an enabler for an alcoholic, like maybe you're trying to do all things and keep them happy and not upset them so they don't go back to drinking. And I realized when I knew that he was using pornography, I would try to make myself available to help him avoid the pornography. But then I let him abuse me. I was like, whatever it is that you need to do, do that, but just don't use pornography. Use me instead, which is so disrespectful to myself. And so I just shut myself down to just, be a coping mechanism for him. And it was horrific. Now I can go back and look at that and I can take accountability for how I tried to manage his addiction, how I tried to control it. And I mean, I'm grateful that he eventually got caught because it just blew everything wide open. But it still took me another 15 years to be able to look back and see how on earth did I stay in that relationship for as long as I did? Why didn't I tell somebody? Why didn't I, and it was all fear, not necessarily so much fear of him, but fear for like our financial security. He was a pastor at a church and we lived in the parsonage. And if I go and tell anybody at our church, there goes our income, there goes our housing, I mean, where am I going to live? What am I going to do? And rather than trust God with any of that or, just believe that it would work out, when I discovered porn usage, just intermittently, when I find something, I I would deal with him directly, and he would swear I'm never going to do it again. It was this one time, and I messed up, and I'm done. And I believed him or wanted to. I probably didn't actually believe him, but you know I can see the patterns now from the other side. But back then I couldn't see that I was in a pattern. It was just my life. So I didn't tell other people. So I helped him hide his pornography addiction, and I didn't realize it was spiraling out of control. I didn't know how bad it was, until it all blew up. But I can see now how I was trying to control his behavior. I was trying to keep him from going that direction, but I I don't have that kind of power over anybody. I don't have the ability to make somebody else stop being in their addiction. I can't make anybody want to change.
yeah.
All the only person I have control over is myself. And so that's the person that I have to answer to. And And even like I don't do a good job of controlling myself, so I have to surrender that to a higher power. I have to surrender that to Jesus Christ. I can't do it on my own.
Well, and in the recovery community, it's talked about a higher power, right? Whatever that
Hmm.
higher power is for
All the
each
time.
individual,
Yep.
because you've said it, we have no control,
Hmm.
and I mean, again, I don't agree with that we're powerless over our addiction, and I also don't agree that we're powerless over our own life, right? Because we are. We have the power to do whatever we need to do. Can we do it alone? Absolutely not. We cannot
Right.
do it alone. And that's where I think a lot of people with that fear comes from. And also, while you was telling this story, the shame about it as well, right? Because I hid my
Hmm.
my wife's addiction from everyone, all my family, my friends,
Absolutely.
and all that was doing was that was giving me two shovels to dig my hole even deeper,
Yep.
instead of one, and not realizing that we're doing it, and when we can get that control back, and when we can say, look, I have no control over what they do, and that's what happens to those of us on the other side is we do everything that we can to be there, especially when it comes to parents, right?
Mm.
Especially with mothers, because they grew that human inside them. There's that
Hmm.
bond, and it's so hard to let it go, and to learn how to love from a distance and still be there. It's not like you have to push them completely out of your life, but to still be there, but be there in a different way
Yep.
that it's still, oh my gosh, my guest last week even said that she would rather be the person having the addiction than having
Mm.
a loved one that's in the addiction because of what we have to go through, because it's so hard for us on the other side to let go. I pulled my wife off the street many times.
Hmm.
I mean, we did get a divorce, but she did not like me calling her my ex-wife, and we still loved and cared about each other. So, and
Yeah.
a friend did a reading and said that she's the one that actually said it to me. She does not like you saying that she's your ex-wife. She always looked at you as a husband, and she always will. And
Mm.
so anyway, I still call her my wife, but you know, it's so hard to get to that point when you have to go, I love you, but I cannot continue to pull you out of the problems that you get yourself into.
Yeah.
And so many parents do that with their kids, and I can get it. I understand why, right?
Yep.
I get it 100%. However, you've said it many times, Laney, it's up to that individual
Hmm.
to make their own choice. And you opened your eyes, you saw it. You even said during when we first talked a month ago, it's like, um, gosh, what did you say? It's like, why do I keep doing this to myself?
Hmm.
Right? It's because we don't realize the trap that we're in either. That's why we keep doing it to ourselves.
Yep. I even like I was able to acknowledge that I had codependency in my adult relationships and especially my romantic relationships fairly early on. But even after that, I couldn't see it with my children. I could not identify it. And now my youngest is almost 18, and we have lots of really good conversations around codependency and people pleasing and fear. And I acknowledge now for most of her life, the 17-year-olds, I have let her kind of run the show because if she got upset, she would do like public displays of being upset. And they wouldn't be, we're not talking like throwing fits or tantrums, but her body language would change. She'd get really sulky or sullen. She'd glare at people if they tried to talk to her. If somebody came up like, hey, how you doing? She'd be like, eh. And I was embarrassed. I'm like, they're being nice to you. Be polite back. Like, what do I? So then I would like try to interject and like I try to get her happy again. And I'd play with her a little bit. Like I'm rewarding her behavior. I'm trying to like shield them from her attitude, and I'm trying to mask her attitude through my over exuberance. And rather than just what I know now, and as she gets older and we've seen it, my social battery is charged by being in a room full of people. and I get to engage with different people and I get to have conversations and we hug and we laugh. I could do that all night long. I'll be the last person out. I'll be there till midnight cleaning up chairs because I just want to be around people. My daughter's social battery has a much shorter expiration time. She's good for an hour or two, and then she's done. And I couldn't understand why she couldn't keep going, why she would just shut down and, like, and if she would turn rude, but, and to me, that was not permissible. In my growing up, you weren't allowed to be rude. You couldn't tell somebody you didn't feel like talking to them anymore, or that you were tired and wanted to go to bed, or that you weren't enjoying the party anymore. You had to put on a smile and keep going. And my daughter has learned a boundary. She's like, I can give you maybe 2 good hours and then I need to not be here anymore or it's going to get ugly. And she doesn't mean for it to turn ugly. It's not a threat. It's not a manipulation. That's just when her social battery is done and she has nothing left to give. And at that point, if somebody tries to engage with her, she's just going to be like, back off, leave me alone. And now that I understand that, I don't try to mask for her anymore. I mean, I wasn't masking in the first place. They could all see what was going on, but I was trying to control her attitude and cheer her up or get her back on the good side of things. And it worked occasionally, but not very well. And the rest of the time I just, like I would leave because she's being grumpy, but then I'm mad that we have to leave because I wanted to stay longer because I was having a good time. And, now we know if we're going someplace together, we either need to go separately so that she can leave when she needs to and I can stay longer if I want to. Sometimes she'll sacrifice and be like, I know that this is going to be a longer event. I'm going to probably have to pull back for a little bit and go sit in a corner and recharge, but I'll come back into it when I feel better. We had a gathering a couple weeks ago that was 5 hours long, and she was there from the setup. She helped with everything. She was really engaging for about the first hour that people were there, and then she just kind of like hood over the head on the table, and just kind of like shut down. And rather than be like, "Come on, talk to people, be friendly," like I just let her do it, and it doesn't impact me. Nobody's looking at me thinking I'm a terrible mom because my daughter's not engaging. She's a different human from me, and I can still do what I need to do and not worry about whether or not she's impacting people if they don't like her or do like her or like it was so freeing. It's so nice to just let her manage herself the way that she needs to. And then when she was ready to come back into the party, hood came off, shoulders came back, smiles back on her face, but it was in her timing. It wasn't me coercing her or, trying to get her to do something I wanted her to do. And now that I understand more about how she operates and I understand my codependency, it's easier to identify and go like, oh, I don't have to manage her emotions. I don't have to try to apologize to other people for the way that she's behaving. She can be herself and do her things. I can do myself and my things. And sometimes she'll even come back afterwards. She's like, I was a little cranky there at the end. I'm sorry about that. She'll identify it and come back, and then we like, okay, so what can we do next time to not have that happen again? Like, do we need to leave earlier? Do you need to tell me? Like, do you need to go sit in the car for a little bit or are you done for the night and you just need to go home now? And I need to be okay with if we go together, I know that there might be a stopping point that's sooner in the evening than I would want it to be.
Yeah.
But I would much rather engage with her and have those memories with her than exclude her so that I can stay longer. So I'm willing, that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make, happy to make, but it's not a codependent thing. It's just an understanding.
Oh,
It's not,
absolutely. Yeah.
so and it's so cool to be able to talk about it, to have the label of codependency and be able to identify the things that are going on and why I respond the way that I do and how can I respond differently, and I love somebody told me once that other people are not thinking about me near as often as I think they are. They don't care.
Sure.
They really don't care. They don't go home and have a 2 hour conversation about what Laney did at the party last night. That is not their problem. So the stuff that I overthink and worry about and like, oh, somebody saw me do that. Somebody's thinking I'm dumb or whatever, they're not.
No.
And if they have a passing thought, it's like that. It's in and out. It doesn't resonate and sit there like it does in my head.
And isn't that crazy how we listen to those stories in our head,
Mm,
I as I mentioned at the beginning of the show with our sponsor Emergo Academy about the brain first approach and I've been taking some other training and and I tell you what, it has really helped me. There was a time here just recently where I just was just in this funk. And I've learned now through my training that these replays that kept playing in my head. I mean, I tell you, the needle was stuck on one thing constantly. It was all throughout the day, throughout the night. As soon as I woke up, it was the same thing.
mm,
It was like this for days, for weeks. And I remembered in my training, it's like until you ask your brain the question, it'll continue to play the same thing. And I went,
Mm,
oh my gosh. So I did. I'm like, okay, subconscious, why are you constantly playing this in my head? Where is this coming from? Help me realize where this is coming from. And I'd still get a little bit of the replay, but I'd have gaps. And so I'm like, okay, I'm starting to get gaps. So, okay, I'd ask again, come on, help me out. Where is this coming from? I don't understand. Laney, it took probably a week and a half, maybe even two
mm,
weeks. And then all of a sudden, and I mean, all of a sudden, it hit me. It happened all the way back when I was 7.
mm,
That's what was starting this whole thing. So is it Dr. Gamore? Is that how you say his name? He
mm.
talks about if you have somebody that's having issue with the trauma, they will act the age that that trauma happened.
So true. Yep.
And I
Until
found
they
that
deal with it, right?
right, yeah, until we
Mhm,
deal with it. So I was able, and our brains will figure it out, right? That's how intelligent they are. We just have
mhm.
to learn how to ask it different questions and get rid of. I mean, I got 62 years of old maps that I
Uh-huh.
just some of them I want to keep, and other ones I need to just crinkle up and frickin' burn and get rid of. And the only way to do it is to write new ones, right? And
Yep.
and so now I've been going back now that I know that, and I've been going back going, oh my gosh, that was the 7-year-old me here. That was the 7-year-old me here. That was the
Mhm.
7-year-old me here. And I started realizing where it was all coming from. And then all of a sudden I woke up one day and even the people that I talked to at the gym, my friend Kelly there, she even came up to me this week and she goes, man, you're back to your lively self again. It's so good to see it. I'm like, I know, I feel amazing. I feel so good because I got it
Mhm.
figured out. And now I'm rewriting this new map. So I love that you brought that up.
Yep. That neuroplasticity, the fact that we have those pathways in our brains that we can retrain and relearn. And I think part of codependency was I remember like the thing that stands out in my mind the most, like I could identify like there was a codependent behavior. It was probably there before that, but in fourth grade, I wore a pair of pants to school that I thought were super cool. They weren't. They were golf pants. They were terrible. But I loved them. And they fit my quirky personality and I was happy in my quirky personality. And all the kids at school made fun of me for the pants. And, I why did I care what they thought of my pants? But it hurt so deeply to be rejected like that. I was
Mm.
like, from now on, I'm only wearing pants they approve of. From now on, I'm only wearing clothes that they agree with. From now on, like, and I like that. I mean, I know that's like when I made a conscious shift to try to fit in better and not be quirky. And it took me all the way until this year to accept I am loud. I can be obnoxious. I am over the top. I am too much for some people. And I've been masking that my entire life and to not have to mask anymore, to not, but the the neural pathways, like the ones that you've traveled your whole life that are just ingrained, those ruts, in your brain, it's easy to, I wear a pair of really sparkly purple shoes sometimes, and I really, really love these shoes, but they're bright and they're loud and like people don't normally notice shoes until they're glowing. They're like, whoa, look at your shoes. And my the first time I wore them, oh, I guess the second time, I had them on at church and I just had jeans. You could see them very easily. They weren't covered up by a dress or a skirt or anything. And I had that second of like, someone's like, whoa, those shoes are obnoxious. And I was like, almost like want to go home and change them and never wear them again. And I was like, yep, just like me. They fit my personality perfectly. And I owned it rather than running away from it. And that was super freeing, just to be myself and to be okay with the fact that who I am, how I operate, the way that my personality is, all the quirks, I don't have to be for everybody. It's okay that people don't connect with me. There's some people who are like, whoa, you're too much. That's okay. I'm not their person. That's fine. I don't have to be everybody's person, so I don't have to win the room. Like, just find the people that resonate with me and enjoy spending time with me that can handle the loud, the boisterous, the excited. And I know like when I when I get into those rhythms in my brain where you'll like you were talking about like going to the gym and like you're all like people can tell like you're down, you're not yourself, you're not the people around you that know you recognize something is out of sync and you're wrestling with that. And I knew coming into this winter, I struggle with not getting enough sunlight. I'm in an office all day long where there's any sunshine at all. I don't enjoy winter sports. I'm from Southern California and we didn't have winter sports in Southern California, so that wasn't part of my upbringing. And to come out here, people are snowshoeing and snowboarding and skiing, and none of that is in my repertoire. And I just don't want to risk an injury. But you know, so like I feel like from November, December-ish till March or April, I'm kind of just a homebody and I'm stuck inside and I could feel that coming on, that like, oh, here comes the depression, here comes like the just downtroddenness. And I I don't think I even realized that I was asking myself that question, like you were talking about, like, what's going on? Why am I feeling this way? What can I do differently? And really, I mean, for me, the answer is like just keep getting out. Like just because it's dark at 5 doesn't mean you have to go home and go to bed. You're allowed to stay out till 8 or 9. Like the hours are the same just because it's dark, you know.
Yes.
And I just, I kind of had in my head, well, it's dark. It must be time to go ahead. Like my brain just wants to shut down. But if I go and engage in the things I still enjoy doing, even though there's less sunshine, I can be around the people that support me and encourage me and love me, and that fills my tank. That fills my love tank.
Mhm.
And so I made a proactive decision. Like I wouldn't say I just chose not to be depressed because that's not fair. I have been in depression that there's not, it's a chemical imbalance and there wasn't a choice to just bootstrap it. But this time, like coming into it, I already had that sense of like, oh no, here it comes, like the dread before it ever hit. Like it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. Like so that anticipation, like already, I'm kind of like telling my brain it's gonna get bad. I'm telling myself the wrong thing to begin with. And then when it finally like started to creep up in, making a different choice and choosing a different pathway, another way of thinking. Like keep doing what you were doing before that you were enjoying. You don't have to go and sequester yourself and hibernate until March, you know, and it's not as easy. I have to be a lot more intentional about it, just because it gets dark early. And I think the lack of sunshine has a little bit to do with it, but that's easily dealt with too. So
Yeah.
it's good to be able to address the things that are cycling through in your brain and go like, okay, where's that coming from? Why am I feeling that way? What can I do to change it? What do I need? What needs to happen to not go down that same familiar path? Find a different way.
Absolutely. It's you definitely have to ask that question because if not, if you're not asking the question, it'll continue to go through the same thing, and
Hmm.
kind of like what, you've talked about with your story and even with my journey as well, where we say, why do I keep finding myself in the same situation? And it's because we haven't learned the damn lesson yet, you know? I mean, God tests us. He puts us in the same situation over and over and over until we learn the lesson. Then once we learn the lesson, he's got another one lined right
Hmm.
up for us,
Yes,
right?
he does.
And
Absolutely.
it's so crazy how we beat ourselves up with that. It's like, why? What's going on? And then we're trying to put blame on someone else or something else, or we're beating ourselves up over and over and over. And
Hmm.
finally, when all of a sudden you open your eyes and you ask for some guidance and you ask for some direction, and sometimes it's just not even through what I call my Holy Spirit, because I feel like my Holy Spirit and my angels talk to me all the time and
Mm.
guide and direct me. And sometimes I know it's God directing me in the right direction, but sometimes it comes from somebody else. And a lot of
Yep.
times, if it comes from somebody else, it comes from multiple. It just doesn't come
Yes.
from one person. And usually, if I get a second and then definitely a third, I'm going, okay, I get it.
Sit
Okay,
up and pay attention to that. I'm trying to
right?
tell you something.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
like I'll
Yeah.
slap you once. Okay, here's a second slap. Okay, here's a third one, and this one's gonna hurt. You know?
Yep.
And then
So
you're
I feel
going,
like
oh my gosh.
all my adult relationships were that same cycle, and I was beating myself up and why, and I used to say something along those same lines of like, God was trying to teach me a lesson to rely on him and not people, to fear him, not people, and not fear like be terrified, but fear like in awe and reverence and respect, and he's the one that can control things, not other people. And when it finally switched, immediately lesson two. but it took me 46 years to learn the first lesson. So I'm probably only going to learn 2 lessons in this lifetime. But it, I'm a hard-headed person, and I just felt like, well, I screwed it up last time, but I think I could screw it up differently this time. I need a second chance and a
I
third
need a
chance. And
second chance. Yeah.
yeah, and, I just, I didn't see that I was doing anything wrong. I really had the victim mentality, and
Mm.
I, I just saw, like you said, everybody is doing things to me, but then when I finally got to the end of myself this last year, it was just like, okay, but why am I like, there are other people that have healthy relationships around me that aren't living in turmoil all the time, that aren't miserable with their partners, like, so what is it that I'm doing differently that's causing me to continue this, perpetuating this cycle? And the people that were in my life, that especially the romantic partners, like they definitely took advantage of the fact that I was codependent. Like there's a really symbiotic relationship, not a healthy one, but the narcissist that feeds off of the codependent, and that the codependent gives and gives and gives, and the narcissist takes and takes and takes and takes, and it destroys the codependent. It's not any good for the narcissist either, but they don't really usually see that. But
Yeah.
it wasn't until I've got to stop the madness. I've got to stop looking for someone else to fulfill me. I was looking to another person to tell me that I was valuable, that I was worthy, that I was loved, that I had something to offer the world. And when I remember the Saturday that it hit me earlier this year, it's like, I don't need someone else to tell me that. I know that inherently. And
Yeah.
God says that about me. That's all I need. I don't need another person to come and validate me. If you like me, awesome. If you don't, just as awesome. Doesn't matter. Does
Yeah.
not matter. If we aren't friends, that's okay. We don't have to be friends. I don't need your approval. I don't need you to stamp off on me. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. I believe that I'm doing what I'm called to do, and that's enough.
Yeah.
And that was so much, just releasing all of that burden and just the freedom and the joy that came from not having to deal with that anymore, not have to, seek that approval. And I I didn't want a man anymore. Like that, the desire for a relationship went out the window. Like that day, I was like, I don't care. I don't need to be somebody's person in order to have worth and be able to contribute and to do whatever I'm called to do. And it took all of like 2 months from the time that I decided I was super content being single, and I was confident in who I am because God says who I am, and because I just inherently know I was made, I was created for a purpose. That purpose is not just to be somebody else's prop.
Yeah.
I have value by myself. And as soon as I started walking in that confidence and that assurance, I stopped looking to other people to make me feel better. And somebody noticed me, and I didn't notice them right away. I was like, I'm super content, loving my single life, really good with where I'm at. I don't need you validating me. Have a nice life. I had never, ever rejected a potential suitor in my life, ever. And I told this sweet man that I was not interested. I love having friends, love to be your friend. That's it. And then I strongly sensed that God was saying, now that I've got you in this place and you've learned your lesson, now you can be in a really healthy interdependent relationship where neither of you are depending on each other or asking each other to be something other than you are. You're both relying on me, and now you guys can function together. And
Yeah.
then we got married. And the cool thing is, like, we're in a weird season because he got in a little bit of trouble, and he had to go away for a little bit, and codependent me would have been wrecked. Would have been just, I don't know what to do. I need to manage this. How do I fix it? Well, and I would just have been a blubbering mess all the time. But I'm still me. I'm still solid. My person is missing right now. They'll come back. They're okay. But in the interim, what I'm able to do, because I've addressed the codependency, because I acknowledged it, accepted it, embraced it, and went, okay, how do I do differently than that? I'm still worthy. I'm still valuable. I'm still enough. I can still do what I'm called to do. And I'm not wrecked at all. I genuinely have joy in this season. I see growth. In fact, we had one final date. We didn't know it was going to be our last date, but we had our last date. Um, and we just drove up onto the mountainside and looked over the city and sat in the back of the car and just looked out over the city lights. It was really good. But we talked about like what's coming for us and what the future looks like and how we want to align with God's purpose for us. You're just envisioning what it could be. And
Yeah.
I I remember telling him like I feel like God has big things for us. I think he's gonna use us in a powerful way. And the very next day he he had to go away. And I was just thinking about it as I was walking into work this morning and I was like, sometimes you have to grow and like you'll be put in situations that are uncomfortable, unpleasant. Like this was not how I saw my year ending, you know, but what am I going to do in this season? I can rail against it. I can be super upset. I could, boohoo. I could crawl into my PJs and just stay in bed all day and feel sorry for myself. Or I can continue walking in my purpose that was my purpose. It's not tied to anybody else. My worth isn't connected to
Yeah.
anybody else's. My value isn't connected to anybody else's. I can stand on my own 2 feet and be who I am.
It's your path, right?
It's my path and it's so good. And our paths are connected. I think we're both growing right now. We just aren't growing side by side right this minute, but we will
Yeah.
be. It'll all come up, it'll all come about. But it's I I see the growth in myself that God got me to the point where when this happened, that I was ready. My feet were planted. I was rooted, and this hasn't shaken me. I mean, like I was like, whoa, that I didn't see that coming. This is a little painful, but it's not something that is like career ending, life altering. It just okay. This is
So
part of my story. It's okay.
let me ask you this. When things like this have happened to me, like what you're saying, I don't remember when I finally got this thought, but I'm like, I'm
Mm,
being tested to see how much I've really grown. Because I tell myself that I've grown,
mm,
but until you get put in that situation, I mean, that's like telling somebody, yeah, I can swim. And then they throw you in the water. Well, can you swim? Really?
yep. Yep.
How well can you swim? And it doesn't matter. I mean, if you stay afloat and you get from point A to point B, then you did it. And sometimes it's rough to get there. It's not
Yeah.
always that smooth. However, I look at it as it's a test, and especially with stuff that's happened with my year this year, with all the things. And I'm like, man, he has given me one test after another test to see really where is my faith? Really,
Mm-hmm.
how strong have I become? And and what I said earlier about we will go through the exact same things over and over and over till we learn the lesson. It's like, well, see, how well have you learned this lesson? Let's give you a little test, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of crazy because this thought just popped in my head. I did not like school and especially tests. I
Mm,
mean, still as an adult in my 60s, if someone said you got to take a test tomorrow, I would feel all the blood rush to my feet.
mm.
It's something that just makes me curl up and just like, oh my gosh, it just fears me. And however, I feel that I have a little bit more strength when God gives me those tests compared to someone saying I'm going to have to take a physical test.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like,
Yeah.
okay, is this testing me? What is it now that I'm supposed to learn from this? What am I supposed to get? So I don't know if that's how you're seeing it with what your situation has just happened. It's like, okay, have you really grown? Let's see. I'm going to open
Yeah.
the window and let the storm come in a little bit.
100%. So I told him, like, we're going to have storms. Things are going to come into our life because that's promised. Like, life is not easy. There's going to be trials and tribulations, and it's going to be a struggle. That's just how it is. But when my first husband got arrested in 2006, I walked away from church. I gave up everything. I was like, if this is what God has to offer, I'm not about it. I didn't know really at the time. I thought that church and faith was just like I go to church, I teach Sunday school, I play the piano, I lead the choir, I empty all the trash cans. Like that's me. that's my faith.
Yeah.
It was all circusy. It was all just action. It was just like it wasn't anything personal. It wasn't a relationship with a higher power. It was not any kind of conscious contact. It was just me doing a list of chores. And when he got arrested, life completely just in the toilet. I lost everything. I had to come back home to my parents the state they lived in, and just like tail tucked between my legs. Now I'm a divorcee, and that was never going to be my label. I was never going to get like you get married once and you're with them forever. And after what he did, like I had never even comprehended that that was an option. That could possibly happen in my lifetime. And my third husband had a similar situation, and he also got arrested and went to prison. And I did the same thing, off the rails, and I handled it differently. I did not do what I did the first time. I didn't run back to my mom and dad, but instead I ran to illicit sex and drugs and alcohol, and just trying to not feel anything or feel something different than just mortally wounded again. And I lived in that cesspool for a few years. And then, when God got a hold of me this year, and the transformation that he's been doing, like you said, like, here comes the test again. What are you going to do this time? And this time I got the phone call, like, hey, I'm going away. And that was, there's a little bit of like, whoa, okay. And then, there were several days of like, there's some crying, there's some praying, there's some soul searching. And then it was like, I got this. I know who I am. I know whose I am. And I know what to do this time. I know how to rely on my higher power, on Jesus Christ, to get me through. And that's one day at a time, but every single day he's right there with me. I thought about this morning that old poem about the footprints in the sand.
Oh my gosh, I
And
love
it's,
that one. Yes.
but it's always like, I thought about it. I was brushing my teeth this morning and it just popped into my head. But the poet says, like, at the end, I looked back over my life and saw places where there were only one set of footsteps. I'm like, God, where were you? He's like, those are the times I carried you.
Yeah.
I can look at my now, be like, this, I'm being carried right now. There's one set of footprints. I can't do this on my own. This is way too hard. And it's kind of cool because I get to talk to other people who are in my friend circles. They're like, hey, how you doing? And they're just expecting, like, oh, it's terrible and I can't manage and it's just everything's. And I'm like, you know what? It's good. God's got me. The smile is genuine. The joy is genuine. I still have that same sense of freedom, and I still feel just as grounded and rooted in Christ and ready for the next thing. And I don't want to be like blasé, like, bring it on. I'm not asking for
Right.
more
Yeah.
trouble.
Yeah.
But whatever storm I find myself in, I know I'm going to weather it. I know I'm going to get through, and not because of anything I can do, but because I've recognized, in order to have control over my life, I have to give it over. On my own, I don't make very good decisions, but
Yeah. I don't
when I
think
go to my
any of
higher
us
power, I
do
do.
really.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I've said many times that where my ego's kicked in, and I'm like, all right, God, I got the steering wheel. I've got this now. And then before I'm in a ditch or in a wall, and it's like, all right, yeah, you go ahead, you got it now.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
yeah,
Anytime I
it
try
is.
to get back in, I love having like little mini conversations kind of in my head with God, thinking about how he like watches me. He like looks down and just sometimes shakes his head. He's like, what are you doing, Laney? What are you doing? And I'll come to him, I'm like, okay, I've got an idea. Here's what we're gonna do. And I figured out 17 ways you could fix this. You could do this, you could I give him my list of like things, and he's just like, hey, you don't even have the half of it. You don't know the big picture. You don't know what I'm doing. You don't know what's going over here or over there or down. How about you just sit back, breathe, be still, stop trying to manage everything, and
Let
you
it
just take
go.
care of your one little piece. I told you to wake up, go to work, be a good employee, be a good mother. Those are your roles. And that's all I have to worry about today. And then it doesn't seem quite so overwhelming.
Well, and I love how you talked about how this time, you where your mindset is at. You have this comfortableness about you, right? And I got that from the
Mm,
first time that we talked as we got into our conversation. And something that I realized with me when I was going through my journey is when it starts again, everything. And I don't know if it's the opposition or I don't know if this is just how the journey goes, but you fall into that comfortableness again, right? It's like, oh my gosh,
mm,
everything is different. Everything is better. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad that this is where I'm at again. And it's almost like that trap.
mm-hmm.
Oh, it's almost like I don't know, look at it as like an Indiana Jones. It's like you're going for the treasure and you think you got it, and then all of a sudden you start realizing now you're trying to keep yourself from stepping on a trap button or something, and you don't realize it till you're already in there because
Yeah.
everything seems so great at the start. That happened to me so many times. It seemed like, oh my gosh, it's back. Oh my gosh. And then, all that love and everything starts pouring back in. And then all
Hmm.
of a sudden, little by little, it starts it starts pulling away and pulling away and pulling away. And then you're back to what you and I have both said.
Hmm.
How the hell did I get myself in this situation again? But when we have that feeling and we learn that lesson, hopefully the whole lesson. I mean, even if
Yes.
we learned half of it, right? It put us in a different way. But when we
Yeah.
start learning that lesson, then I think we really start recognizing more of it. We're not going in blind anymore. We're
Hmm.
going in with our eyes a lot wider. And now instead of going into a dark cave, now we got a little bit of a light, right?
Yeah.
And again, it's my higher power, which is God. It's God's light now leading me, going, okay, here's another test. I'm going to give you a little help this time. Which direction are you going to go? And when we get
Mm.
to that point in our life, my gosh, it feels so good. Now, is that going to be the end of it? Absolutely not. I like to say that when we reach the top of the mountain we've been climbing, great, celebrate it, be excited, but turn around and look behind you because you just hit the bottom of another one.
Yep.
We got to start
Yep.
climbing that one. And we're going to go through similar things, feelings. Some may be different. But again, I really now, and it's taken me 60 plus years to
Hmm.
understand, which is okay. That's been my journey.
Absolutely.
We are all here. God wants us to live a great life and be happy. However, you mentioned it earlier too. Our happiness has to come from us. It cannot come from anyone else. Once we can learn that from ourselves and with ourselves, we can admit more of it to other individuals.
Hmm.
However, something really quick here before we end the show, too, because we're coming up on the hour. I was telling somebody, um, gosh, I can't remember if it was at the gym or where. And I said, I really feel like our young generation. I mean, we're talking little kids from age 1 now up to, I could even probably say maybe even 15, 16. That's the new earth. And the reason why I feel that is I have an 11-year-old granddaughter, and I went and picked her up, and we're going out to go do some, and we start talking about life. And here I am talking about life with this 11-year-old girl. And she said something to me that just my chin just hit the truck seat. I mean, she goes, Papa, if we didn't go through dark times, how would we ever learn? And I was like, oh my hell, you're 11 and you've got this figured out? My gosh, it took me till I was in my 50s and 60s to get this shit figured out. She goes, Papa, will never grow. How boring life would be if it was just perfect all the time. And I'm like, I sat and had a 10-minute adult conversation with this
Hmm.
11-year-old about life and how things are and stuff's going to happen, right? And it's how we deal with it. And I was just in awe. And I've talked to other people who have kids or grandkids or nieces or nephews who say
Yep.
the same thing. And I'm going, okay, something's happening here that we haven't got a hold of yet.
Yeah. Like you can't appreciate the sunshine unless there's also darkness. If it's
Absolutely.
only ever good, you wouldn't even acknowledge that there was good. It would just be it is. And you were talking about like how things get bad again, and how like we get the test over and over again. I used to live in this headspace of like when things are good, I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop. I'm just waiting for the terrible thing. So I never even enjoyed the good times, what there were. I couldn't live in the sunshine and enjoy the sunshine because I was afraid, and I didn't see them as tests. I saw them as punishments. I saw it as like, and when my when my mindset shifted, like you're talking, like these are tests. Okay, you think your faith is strong. Let's see, has it? And this last little bit, like getting to the point where I was solid and comfortable and loved myself and really was enjoying my own life, and then meeting and marrying this incredible man, and then the amount of time that we had together before things kind of went a little bit sideways, I didn't worry about when the other shoe was going to drop. I didn't spend time in the future thinking about the next problem was coming. Yeah, there's going to be problems. There always are. There's going to be a new challenge. Like, how do we grow if there aren't? But when it's in that season of peace and calm, rather than worrying about the next challenge, like go ahead and study for it. Like do what you need to. Like for me, it was like reading the word and praying and going to church and spending time with people that are like-minded with me. Like that was building up my faith. But I didn't spend anxiety effort on worrying about when it was going to happen or how it was going to happen. And I used to think I had to like protect myself. I had to wear a shield all the time because I knew it was coming and I just wanted to like guard myself against it. And you can't. You don't know which direction it's going to come from. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that I didn't waste the last year worrying about what next. And I just got to enjoy the sunshine. And it's been a journey. It's going to continue. I'm going to learn something new. I'm growing right now as we speak.
We speak. And I just want to say thank you for sharing that right there, because you are 100% correct. When we get the sunshine, it's time to enjoy it, and
Hmm.
and allow it to come in and soak it up and enjoy every minute. Because again, God or whoever your higher power is, he wants us to be that way, right? He wants our life
Hmm.
to be that way. However, also we have to learn how to grow to become bigger and better and stronger and understand things a lot more. And when we can
Yeah,
start understanding ourselves and start learning that really, I mean, life is an amazing, amazing blessing that we've all been given here.
so good.
I mean, seriously, it really is. I mean, I've not ever really been that big of a family type person until years ago, and finally I started realizing how much family means to me, you
Hmm.
know. Friends mean more to me than my family did years ago.
Mm.
And now it's totally opposite, and I've also learned God comes first, then my family. And it's not that I'm not knocking my family, but I wouldn't have my family if it wasn't for God. And I wouldn't have
Exactly.
what I have right now because everything comes through him. And
Hmm.
and when when we are grateful for our good times, and even when we are grateful, it sounds crazy, for our bad times.
Yes, yes, yes. It's
Oh,
where you grow.
it's where we grow, right? And some things are taken away from us. And I mean, my gosh, I had my past wife taken away from me, and it was something that's just tore my heart. It was harder to take than losing my leg, and I'm still
Hmm.
battling with it. However, I know that I would not be able to reach my next point if it wasn't for this. And I
Hmm.
have to do my best to go. I have just been blessed that I had 18 plus years with this amazing woman and all the good times that we had, and do my best not to think about the bad times because we did have a lot of great times together. Even during the depths of her addiction, we still had some times that was really, really fun.
Sure,
So,
of
is
course.
there anything else, Laney, that you would like to share with our listeners? Do you got something, a hidden, powerful message you'd like to share?
This is my parting thought. Just as sure as I know when you're having sunshine, you know nighttime is coming. You know something is going to happen that's going to disrupt your sunshine. We can live in the sunshine, enjoy the sunshine, and then accept the nighttime when it comes. But just as sure as the nighttime came, the sunshine is going to come again too. You're not going to be stuck in nighttime.
I
The
love
sun's
that.
coming again.
Wow. Thank you. That's powerful. That is very, very powerful. That gave me goosebumps over here on the other side. And I love what I the goosebumps because that means it really hit right here.
Same. Yep.
Yeah. Well, Lainey, thank you again. And I want to say thank you to Carolia for introducing us. So Carolia, if you see this show,
Yes.
thank you so much. I met her
Thank
at
you,
a
Kaylee.
networking group, and so thank you for this connection. And again, thank you, Lainey, for your time. I appreciate
It's
it.
been a
Thank you for the
pleasure.
work that you are doing to help other individuals, right? We all need that help and we all need that hand. to get
Mhm.
us along in our journey. Those breadcrumbs, I guess we're all like little breadcrumbs to help people find their way. And I want
Yes,
to say thank
absolutely.
you again to our sponsor, Emergo Academy. Thank you, Dave and Susan Kenny, for everything that you have done. And guys, again, if you want to change your life, highly recommend checking out emergoacademy.com. Thank you to all our guests, our past guests, our future guests, and most of all, thank you to all your listeners for making this happen. We're going to leave you with this as we do at the end of every show. Remember, addiction is giving up everything for one thing, and recovery is giving up one thing for everything.
For
We're
everything.
out.